Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Esberk VA here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 18 in Season 3 of What If Deku Had a Regen Quirk. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. And so, we begin.
What do you mean the end is near?
The end of the story, duh. Midoriya looked at his older self in disbelief. Why was he treating this situation like a joke? Midoriya had just gotten kidnapped by the League of Villains and was in an induced coma, and his older self was making a weird fourth wall shattering joke. Now, he was truly becoming an off-brand Deadpool. How did he know who Deadpool was?
Stop messing around! You have been through this already, so tell me what to expect and how to get out of this situation.
Older Midoriya looked like he was considering for a moment, and then he spoke again. You've gone through the exposition and rising action pretty well, so just be prepared for the climax. His face suddenly turned serious. Remember what I told you back in part 10? Because my foreshadowing is going to come to fruition soon. Oh my god, what was this guy on about? Part 10 was like 8 parts ago. How does he know that? Oh no. Younger Midoriya shook his head and replied, So is it the part about someone sprouting fingers everywhere? How do I even do that? Older Midoriya just gave his younger self a knowing smile. This is a spoiler-free zone. You'll find out in the part 20 finale. Things are gonna go by quickly, so try to keep up. Speaking of which, I think it's time to return to the main story. Younger Midoriya was about to protest, but he felt a warmth ignite in his heart. He could wake up now. Ooh, that's fun. A bright light consumed him as his older self waved him goodbye. Midoriya wondered when he would gain the ability to see meta-constructs, but as he found himself strapped to a hospital bed, he realized that there were bigger things to worry about at this time than the potential of being fictional. The room stunk of rubbing alcohol, and the beeping of his vitals drilled into his head. There were distant sounds of yelling and explosions going off in the distance, but he had to strain in order to hear it. He was strapped down by the head, wrists, and ankles, meaning that he could only move his eyes, really. He saw how various wires dug into his forearms, and most of them contained a crimson-red substance. Midoriya knew the sight of blood like the back of his hand, and the tubes were most definitely siphoning his blood. Wonderful. Following the trail of tubes with his eyes, he saw a storage tank to which all the tubes connected. Midoriya forced his body to eject the tubes from his arms, and his quirk did what it was asked. With that out of the way, Midoriya continued to survey his surroundings within his eyesight. There was a door in front of him and a storage tank to his right, and another hospital bed to his left. He didn't quite have enough dynamic head movement to see who it was, but he could see strands of pale blue-gray hair falling off the side of the bed. Their legs were covered in bandages and appeared to be strapped down in the same way Midoriya was. Midoriya spoke and quickly realized how dehydrated he was. Despite the hoarseness of his voice, Midoriya called out,
Hey! Are you okay? Where are we?
The person was silent for a moment, but then they spoke out in a soft voice.
I think I'm okay. Sorry, I don't know. It's usually just me here, but they brought you here a couple of months ago, I think.
Holy shit, the villains kidnapped a little girl. Wonderful. That wasn't the most important thing, though. Wait, it's not? He had been gone for months? How many months? The room they were in had no windows, no clock, and no calendar. Fun. The sound of his vitals started beeping faster as his anxiety grew. The girl spoke again.
I'm sorry.
Right, there was a kid here with him, so he should keep his cool. He took a deep breath to calm himself.
You don't have to apologize.
A moment passed. Maybe he could ask her for some information? He shouldn't push her, though, that she must be as terrified as Midoriya was.
What's your name? My name is Izuku Midoriya, and I'm a hero student from UA. My name is Eri. I think that I turned 6 years old already, but I don't remember.
When Midoriya got out of here, he was going to give whoever kidnapped this sweet little girl absolute hell. He tried to put on his calmest voice as he said,
Even though this is an odd situation to meet, it's nice to meet you, Eri. Do you know who's keeping us here?
Eri shifted in her restraints uncomfortably as she replied,
Shie Hasaikai.
Things were a lot worse than Midoriya thought. The League had branched out and now had connections to the Yakuza. How does he know that? Has anyone ever told him that? Oh well. The distant sound of fighting grew louder, being muffled by the door. Midoriya asked another question.
Do you know what's happening out there? I don't know. It's usually quiet.
An explosion went off and the vibration shook the room. A familiar voice shouted indistinguishable words. More familiar, yet unidentifiable voices were approaching, mixed in with unfamiliar ones. Midoriya was intently staring at the door, focusing his senses to try and make out what was happening. Suddenly, a face popped up through the door, and Midoriya felt his soul leave his body. Midoriya's eyes hesitantly opened, and the face was still there. Piercing blue eyes stared back at him. The boy looked directly at Midoriya, then to Eri, and he fully passed through the door. He moved quickly, first untying Eri and then untying Midoriya. The boy's hero costume had the number 1,000,000 embroidered on his chest with a flowing red cape. with red gloves which reached out to help Midoriya stand up. He held onto Eri protectively and spoke. "I'm Lemillion. We've been trying to find you for a long time, Midoriya. Let's bring you back." Midoriya and Lemillion ran down the hall towards the sounds and vibrations of a possible fight. The ceiling was crumbling and the floor was shaking, and Midoriya could now faintly make out some words. "Die, you bird freak! Great explosion murder god dynamite, be careful!" Wait, that gaudy hero name, could it be? Both boys' instincts told them to halt, and a moment later, Bakugo's body crashed through the wall. He didn't stay out of the fight for long, though, immediately blasting himself back into the other room. Midoriya could swear that the blonde gave a quick smile of acknowledgement before continuing his battle, but he was already back to running down the claustrophobic halls to continue thinking about it. Before long, they stumbled upon daylight, and a swarm of police and heroes awaited them. He saw the relieved faces of familiar UA teachers and some of his classmates. They all swarmed him, bombarding the teen with questions and exclamations of, "Are you okay?" and "We missed you so much." For Midoriya, it felt like only a couple of hours passed, but the reality of the situation hit him hard. He'd been missing in action for months now. He failed everyone. Oh boy. His brain was gonna love that. The crowd around him dispersed as a massive amalgamation of flesh burst out of the building and flew into the sky. The blob of muscle and body parts rearranged into the formation of a gigantic body. The man in the center had a bird beak mask over his mouth and nose. "Okay, who is that?" "His name is Overhaul," Uraraka answered. Another figure soon flew up at him with a fist clenched and ready to deliver a full-powered punch. The powerful fist of All Might plunged into the blob of flesh, and bloody chunks scattered across the sky and rained down. Somebody was going to have a bad hair day. Overhaul seemed to have control over the body parts, as the scattered chunks rearranged into a fist that slammed back into All Might, causing him to be sent flying back down into the ground. But something stopped him. Before All Might hit the concrete floor, he stopped suddenly in midair and flew back up with immense speed. Overhaul maneuvered out of All Might's way, and a tendril of bone was sent to stab the hero in the spine. Despite the hero having his back turned, he seemed to sense the incoming attack and turned around to deflect the tendril with a punch. All Might threw his fist forward, and a black tendril shot out of the hero's hand like some sort of whip. It wrapped around Overhaul, and All Might threw him back down to the earth. Upon seeing this, Midoriya felt a strange sense of déjà vu, and every time he tried to grasp onto the memory, it slipped through his fingers like smoke. Ew, wait, why was All Might smoking? The hero usually started smoking when his time limit was up, but this smoke was thicker and darker. It spread throughout the sky, and the images of All Might and the villain disappeared from sight. The sounds of attacks landing and the chunk of flesh or two that dropped down from the faux cloud signified that they were still there. But what exactly was happening was unclear. Other clouds seemed to react to whatever was happening with this smokescreen as temperatures began to rise, and white fluffy clouds, it turned gray. Drops of water landed on Midoriya's face, and he had never felt so relieved in his life. The small drizzle quickly became pouring rain, and Midoriya happily opened his mouth to catch rainwater, because he was very dehydrated. The irregular relief of his dehydration felt like heaven, to be frank. The warm water on his skin washed away months' worth of dirt buildup. The sound of thunder and a flash of lightning reminded Midoriya that, yeah, there was still a fight going on. Fun. The rain dampened the smokescreen, and it gradually dissipated into the atmosphere, revealing the figures still dueling it out. The amount of flesh that the villain had significantly decreased, as much of it had been destroyed during the fight. All Might's punches consistently overpowered that of the villain's, and as his resources continued dwindling, the villain seemed to be panicking. The bird-masked man seemed to fumble some sort of syringe in his hands and drove it into his neck. Midoriya had to squint to see, but he swore that the liquid in the vial was crimson red. The heroes seemed to react in complete horror as many of them began screaming the words retreat, and many of them began evacuating. The villain began convulsing, and his body began generating more and more flesh to replace the stuff that was destroyed. But he wasn't stopping. He grew bigger and more grotesque as muscle layers sprouted out from his body like muscular, and skin oozed from his body. It seemed like he couldn't stop either as he screamed out in agony and attacked wildly, not as calculated as before. All Might didn't falter, as he maneuvered himself through the air and used various black whips to destroy incoming attacks. The people around Midoriya were running, but Midoriya kept his feet planted in place. The fight was hypnotizing to him, seeing the level of heroism and villainy that completely outclassed him in every way. The power of their quirks, the confidence of each decisive attack, the natural battle instinct. This is what he was signing up for by being a hero. He knew he couldn't quite reach their level to fly as high as them, literally, and in the hearts of the public, but this battle at this very moment was everything that Midoriya loved about heroism. Two oddly muscular men punching each other as hard as they can in the face. Yes. An ultimate good, All Might, going against ultimate evil, a Yakuza leader, fighting for their ideals. All Might never let his smile falter, even in the face of a monstrously mutated body, and he seemed to be stronger than he was before. He was moving faster, throwing stronger punches, and he still seemed like he was holding back, like he was storing something. Overhaul, if he was still in that body of a horror nightmare fuel flesh being, used multiple limbs at once to attack, but All Might was much faster. He expertly dodged and weaved between miscellaneous attacks and was countering with punches that disintegrated the flesh into useless dead cells. The parts destroyed seemed to instantaneously regenerate, as if the part was never destroyed in the first place. Midoriya's eyes widened. Overhaul was using his regenerative blood to hurt others. His blood was supposed to heal people and incapacitate villains, but the villains were using it for their benefit. His quirk was helping a villain. His quirk was causing innocent lives to be in danger. Who knows how many people his quirk has indirectly killed by now? Why can't he sense it, though? He usually has a connection with his cells, but when he tried to sense them within Overhaul, he felt nothing. Well, he can somewhat sense them, but he can't control them anymore. Like whatever was in that vial was more than just his blood, but mixed with other substances, maybe even someone else's blood. Shit. The image of Eri being covered in bandages flashed before his eyes. Lightning illuminated the sky, and as Midoriya was reeling from his discovery, All Might was reeling his fist back. The hero had a lot of time to master his quirks over the past few months. Fa Jin was especially hard for him, as he always wanted to go all out all the time. But in fights like these, it's best to be patient. Store up his kinetic energy and take the villain down in a single punch. All Might sent all of his stored kinetic energy into his right arm and felt the pressure build up like a spring lock. He let his arm explode outwards into Overhaul, and the full force of One For All and the maximum power of Fa Jin caused an explosion of air pressure that effectively blew up the flesh ball from the inside out. Individual organs and body parts were indistinguishable as it was all reduced to the blood which painted the city red. The dark and storming clouds split like the Red Sea, and all that remained was clear blue skies. The unconscious body of Overhaul fell from the sky, but All Might flew towards him and caught the villain before he hit the ground. The two disappeared from sight as they landed a couple of miles away, and Midoriya finally took his eyes away from the sky and looked around. This video is sponsored by Grubhub. With more than 3,000 store locations, Grubhub offers on-demand convenience delivery across the country. You can search for restaurants by cuisine or location, quickly order food from the menu, and track your order from the app, all hassle-free and without any extra charges. Grubhub charges less than other food delivery services, allowing you to get the best value for your money. With Grubhub Plus, you can get free delivery prices for 10 meals every month on orders of $12 or more, for only $9.99 a month. That's not all. You can use the code AFF25 to save 25% off your first mobile order of $15 or more. This code is for a limited time, so again, get 25% off your first mobile order of $15 or more now if you use the code AFF25. Check the link in the description. Thank you again to Grubhub for sponsoring this video. The area once filled with police and heroes was now abandoned, and only miscellaneous students and teachers from UA remained. Midoriya was absolutely flabbergasted, gobsmacked even. Why weren't the rest of the students as shocked as he was? All Might just revealed the secrets of One For All to the world. Midoriya looked around at everyone's reactions, and they all had a business-as-usual type of look on their faces. Uraraka seemed to catch on to Midoriya's disbelief as she suddenly gasped, "Oh, no one has told you yet. So, All Might has a quirk called One For All, which is a stockpiling type of power passed down from generation to generation. The previous users passed down their strengths and quirks, so now All Might has access to them all." Midoriya's mouth hung agape. To Uraraka, it looked like Midoriya was trying to comprehend the concept of One For All, but in reality, Midoriya was completely and utterly confused as to what had happened while he was gone. Midoriya slowly asked, "Uraraka, can you please tell me what day it is?" "Oh, of course," she replied, searching her pockets for a phone. And there it was, clear as day, the date. It was early February. Midoriya had gone missing during the summer training camp in late June. He was gone for over half a year. He kept repeating the words inside his head. 8 months. 8 whole months. How was I gone? For 8 months! He looked around him as the world began spinning. Everyone looked older and stronger. The hero costumes were tattered and dirty. He stumbled, his eyes were blurry, and his stomach was twisting uncomfortably. Probably because he hadn't eaten in 8 months. If his stomach wasn't completely empty, he'd vomit his guts out. Midoriya was hyperventilating. No amount of air was enough to calm him down. He wasn't hurting at all physically. He wasn't sure if he was allowed to, but his heart still ached. "Hey, Midoriya, take a seat." He felt a hand on his back and he turned to see who it belonged to. "Oh my god." Midoriya didn't care that he just said that out loud. For a brief moment, he didn't realize who he was looking at, but as his eyes drifted from the bandaged skin and short jet black hair to an all-too-familiar capture scarf and hero costume, Midoriya felt his stomach drop even further. "Mr. Aizawa, what happened?" The teacher reluctantly pulled his hand back as his singular uncovered eye looked down at it. He had lived like this for so long he had forgotten how his appearance wasn't like how it used to be. Not that his appearance was that much of a concern for him in the first place. His long flowing hair had been burnt off and had to regrow over the course of several months. His skin had been charred and mutilated beyond recognition, and that was only the physical damage. Aizawa shoved both hands into his pockets as he responded, "Don't worry about me, I'm fine. We should get you back to the dorms."
Dorms? What dorms? What about my mom?
Aizawa stopped as he realized yet again that Midoriya had missed a lot. He should catch the student up on everything that had happened. The pair sat in the back seat of a police car, and they began heading toward UA. "Okay, good thing you're sitting down for this, because this is a lot. After you were kidnapped, All Might hunted down All for One and defeated him at Kamino. That's when the secret of his quirk came out. A couple of months later, the League of Villains combined forces with another group and became the Paranormal Liberation Front. A month after that, All for One broke out of Tartarus, and now we're in the midst of, functionally, a war. Villains are running rampant everywhere, and they're all drugged up on quirk amplifiers and armed with quirk-erasing bullets. Shigaraki also has a secondary copy of All for One as well. So All for One and him are our biggest threats. Of course, there's more stuff in between all that, but, well, these were the major events." Okay, Midoriya had a lot of questions.
What are quirk amplifiers and quirk erasing bullets?
Good thing you asked me that, because that's how we were able to track you down. We had intel that the Shiei Hasaikai were distributing a drug that could permanently erase someone's quirk. We then caught wind that they also started distributing a quirk amplifier, which was the most powerful version on the market, even better than Trigger. After a drug bust, Recovery Girl found that your blood cells were used in both the amplifier and erasing files. After Mirio ran into Eri and Overhaul in an alleyway, we were able to pinpoint their location and ambush them. Okay, that all made sense, but Midoriya still had another question that he was curious about.
Mr. Aizawa, what happened to you?
The teacher remained silent for a moment, and he spoke sharp and to the point. The villains overpowered me and Shinso. The kid was able to escape, but they burned me pretty badly. He looked down at his bandaged hand and fiddled with the wrappings. They took my quirk, alongside Ragdoll's too. On the plus side, at least I showed people that you could fight while being quirkless. Never understood why people are on about that in the first place. Midoriya stayed silent. He had no idea what to say in response to any of this. He muttered a soft, "sorry," and the teacher said nothing. The rest of the car ride was silent. When the car pulled up to UA, the campus looked completely different. Walls were erected and armed with various mechanical weapons to protect them from attempts of attack. There were faux cities all around, even more than there had been previously, but these ones were constructed fully for various communities displaced by the war. The car stopped in front of some new buildings called the Heights Alliance. He looked out the window, and a large smile broke out across his face as he ran out of the moving vehicle.
Mom! Izuku!
Midoriya ran and embraced his crying mother, who trembled in his arms. She was sobbing uncontrollably, and her words were incoherent, but Midoriya could feel every loving intention in her voice. Aizawa guided Midoriya and Inko inside the dorm building, and it was completely empty. Everyone was still out there, fighting villains and saving people. And here he was, being sent to rest after 8 whole months of sleeping. Recovery Girl will check up on you tomorrow morning. Spend some time with your mother, and get some food in your system. There was a variety of food set out on the table, and Midoriya begrudgingly satiated his hunger. He wanted to go back out and fight, but at the same time he couldn't leave his mom after disappearing for several months. Maybe some time to regroup was what he needed. Midoriya headed upstairs to where he was told his room was, and when he opened the door, he was shocked to see it fully decorated with items from his old room and miscellaneous other gifts and cards from his friends.
Ever since you disappeared, the school has upgraded their security and had the students live on campus. I decorated your room how I thought you'd like it, and your friends pitched in to help too.
Midoriya felt tears well up in his eyes as he looked around his room, highly decorated with posters and figures of various heroes, but mostly that of All Might. He looked at his desk and saw various framed photos of him and his classmates from the time they spent together in and out of school. Midoriya settled into his desk chair as his mother slept on a makeshift bed next to his own. He read every word of the large stack of papers neatly piled onto the table. He had several letters from all his classmates, several heroes, various family members, and some miscellaneous people he's interacted with throughout the years. The letter from Koda was especially tear-jerking. It was already well past midnight when Midoriya made it to the last letter in the pile. It was from Melissa.
Dear Midoriya, I really hope that you're doing okay, wherever you are. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to crack the encryption faster. I keep on thinking that if I tried harder, I would have been able to save you. If you're reading this, then I want you to know that I never told the authorities about the SIM card. I've been feeding them intel about the villain's plans anonymously, and I've just about publicized everything this card had to offer. I really do think that this was able to help turn the tides of the war, so thank you for trusting me with it. Even though we only met for a brief time, I miss you, and I hope to see you again. Sincerely, Melissa Shield.
With that, Midoriya placed the letter down and went to bed. He was mentally exhausted from the short time he's been back, and all this new information was making his head spin. There was still so much he was missing. He struggled to succumb to sleep as his active mind raced, but eventually dozed off into a peaceful slumber. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in all this information thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, I'd like to thank our patrons: BD Flames, Ethan Davis, Terry Chills, Shifter Meals, Adam Zagel, Zill, XAV Beat 03, and Joshua Phelps. Secondly, I'd also like to thank all of our YouTube members: Toei Acosta, Rob the King, Sith Lord 906, CF2364, and Knuckles, Rimuo Tempest, Angel Juarez, Donald C. Stewart, Bryant Greer, and Demonized Fox. Thirdly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has you covered. Our We the Celestials My Hero Academia and Naruto What If channels retell the stories of their namesake anime with a twist. Check it out if you're interested. Fourthly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details can be found in the description below. And lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, I'd like to extend an invitation to join the team. The only caveat is that we only accept members who are 16 years old and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. We're always looking for new members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video. So thank you all for watching, and have a great day.